The courtroom was packed that Tuesday morning. People filled every seat, waiting to see Judge Judy handle another case. Cameras were ready. The bailiff stood at his usual spot. Everything seemed normal. But then something happened that nobody expected. Something that would change how millions of people think about kindness and justice. Judge Judy walked in wearing her black robe. She took her seat at the bench and looked down at her papers. The case was simple. A landlord suing a tenant for unpaid rent. Nothing unusual. Nothing that would make headlines. She glanced up to call the case, and that's when she saw him. Marcus Thompson stood near the back door. He was the security guard who had worked in that building for almost 15 years. Everyone knew Marcus. He always smiled. He always said good morning. He helped elderly people find their seats and made sure the courtroom stayed safe. But today, Marcus wasn't smiling. His shoulders were shaking. His head was down, and tears were running down his face. Judge Judy stopped talking mid-sentence. She stared at Marcus for a long moment. The entire courtroom went silent. People turned to see what she was looking at. If you want to know why this moment became one of the most shared videos of the year, stay with me. Because what happens next proves that sometimes the most powerful moments in a courtroom have nothing to do with the case being heard. The early morning. That Tuesday started like any other day for Marcus Thompson. His alarm went off at 4:45 a.m. He reached over to turn it off, and for just a second he forgot. He turned to the other side of the bed, expecting to see Sarah sleeping peacefully. But the bed was empty. Reality crashed over him again. 2 weeks. She had been gone for 2 weeks. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, his hands shaking. Today was February 14th, Valentine's Day, Sarah's birthday. She would have been 56 years old. He thought about staying home. He thought about calling in sick. But then what? Sit in this apartment all day, surrounded by Sarah's things? Look at photos until he couldn't breathe? That seemed worse than going to work. At least at work, he had a purpose. He had a routine. He could focus on something other than the crushing weight of loss. Marcus stood up slowly. His body ached. Grief is physical. People don't talk about that enough. It lives in your chest, your shoulders, your bones. Every morning felt like climbing a mountain just to get out of bed. He went through his morning routine like a robot. Shower, shave, put on his security guard uniform. The same navy blue shirt and black pants he had worn thousands of times before. But today, his hands fumbled with the buttons. Simple tasks felt impossible. In the kitchen, he made coffee. 2 cups. He poured the second cup before he remembered. Sarah wasn't here to drink it. He stood there, staring at the extra cup, tears running down his face. It was 5:30 in the morning, and he was already crying. This is how grief works. It ambushes you in ordinary moments. Making coffee, getting dressed, reaching for the phone to call someone who will never answer again. Marcus pulled himself together. He poured the second cup down the sink, grabbed his keys, and walked to the bus stop. The city was still dark. A few other early workers waited at the stop. Nurses finishing night shifts, janitors heading to office buildings, delivery drivers starting their routes. Nobody talked. Everyone looked tired. Marcus wondered if any of them were carrying burdens like his. Probably. Everyone has something they're dealing with. Most people just hide it better. The security guard. Marcus Thompson was 58 years old. He had worked as a security guard for most of his adult life. Before this courthouse, he worked at hospitals and schools. He took pride in his work. He showed up early, stayed late, and never complained. People who worked in the courthouse loved Marcus. The judges respected him. The lawyers knew him by name. The clerks brought him coffee on cold mornings. He was the kind of person who made everyone's day a little better just by being there. Marcus had a simple life. He lived in a small apartment about 30 minutes from the courthouse. He took the bus to work every morning at 6 a.m. He ate lunch at the same deli down the street, always a turkey sandwich and black coffee. He was a creature of habit, steady and reliable. But Marcus was carrying a burden that nobody knew about. His wife, Sarah, had been sick for 2 years. She had cancer, and the treatments were expensive. Their insurance covered some of it, but not everything. Medical bills were piling up on their kitchen table. Marcus worked overtime whenever he could, but it was never enough. 3 months ago, Sarah's condition got worse. She needed a special treatment that cost $12,000. Marcus didn't have that kind of money. He tried to get a loan, but banks turned him down. He asked his family, but they couldn't help. He felt helpless watching the woman he loved suffer while he couldn't do anything about it. Then, 2 weeks before this courtroom moment, Sarah passed away. Marcus took 3 days off work. He came back on the 4th day because he couldn't afford to miss more time. He needed the paycheck to pay for the funeral. He needed the routine to keep himself from falling apart. He thought if he just kept working, kept moving, kept doing his job, maybe the pain wouldn't crush him completely. But grief doesn't work that way. The morning shift. Marcus arrived at the courthouse at 6:15 a.m. He unlocked the security office and turned on the lights. This was his space, his post. For 15 years, he had started every workday in this small room. On his desk was a photo of Sarah from their wedding day. She was 28 years old, wearing a simple white dress, laughing at something Marcus had said. He was 30, wearing a suit his brother had lent him, looking at Sarah like she was the only person in the world. He picked up the photo and traced her face with his finger. "Happy birthday, baby," he whispered. The other security guards started arriving. Jerome came in at 6:30, heading to the main entrance. Lisa showed up at 6:45, assigned to the second-floor courtrooms. They both said good morning to Marcus. He nodded back, not trusting his voice. Did they know about Sarah? Probably. News travels fast in a courthouse. But they didn't say anything. Maybe they didn't know what to say. Most people don't. Marcus began his rounds. He checked all the courtroom doors, verified the metal detectors were working, reviewed the security cameras. This routine had been his life for 15 years. He could do it without thinking, which was good because thinking hurt too much today. At 8 a.m., people started arriving, lawyers carrying briefcases, plaintiffs and defendants looking nervous, witnesses rehearsing their testimonies. The courthouse came alive with activity, and Marcus stood at his post, watching it all. A young woman came through the metal detector carrying a purse. The alarm beeped. Marcus asked her to step aside and checked her bag. She had forgotten about a small pair of scissors inside. He explained she couldn't bring them in. She apologized, embarrassed. "It's okay," Marcus said gently. "Happens all the time. You can leave them here, and I'll keep them safe until you're done." She thanked him and went on her way. That's what Marcus did every day, small acts of service, helping people navigate a confusing system, making sure everyone stayed safe. It wasn't glamorous work, but it mattered. At 9:30 a.m., Marcus got the call that Judge Judy's courtroom would be starting soon. He was assigned to that room today. He took a deep breath and headed down the hallway. The breaking point. Marcus stood near the back door of Judge Judy's courtroom. He had been in this position thousands of times. His job was simple: maintain order, watch for problems, help people find seats. The courtroom filled up. A landlord-tenant dispute was first on the docket. Nothing unusual. Marcus scanned the room out of habit. No threats, no problems. Everything was fine. But then he saw them. A couple in the 3rd row sitting together. The man had his arm around the woman's shoulders. She was leaning into him, looking at something on her phone. They looked comfortable together. Comfortable in the way people are when they've been together for years and still choose each other every day. Marcus thought about Sarah. How she used to lean against him just like that. How they would sit on the couch in the evening, her head on his shoulder, watching TV and not really caring what was on because being together was enough. He would never have that again. The thought hit him like a truck. Never. That word is devastating. Sarah would never lean against him again. Never call him on his lunch break to ask how his day was going. Never tell him about the funny thing that happened at the hospital. Never surprise him with his favorite meal when he got home from work. Never. 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 Marcus felt his chest tighten. His eyes started burning. No. Not here. Not now. He tried to push the emotions down. He tried to focus on his job. But grief doesn't care about your job or your schedule or your need to keep it together. A family entered the courtroom, a father, mother, and teenage daughter. They sat in the front row. The daughter was complaining about having to be there instead of being at school with her friends. The mother shushed her gently. The father put his hand on the mother's knee, a small gesture of connection. They had no idea how lucky they were. Together, healthy, alive. Marcus thought about all the mornings he had taken for granted with Sarah, all the times he had been too tired to talk, all the moments he wished he could get back. His shoulders started shaking. He tried to stop it, but he couldn't. Tears spilled over and ran down his face. He stood there in his uniform at his post, crying silently, while the courtroom filled with people who had no idea what he was going through. This was the moment Judge Judy walked in and noticed him. The moment Judge Judy watched Marcus for what felt like forever, but was probably only 10 seconds. Then she did something she had never done in 40 years on the bench. She stood up. The lawyers looked confused. The plaintiff and defendant glanced at each other. The audience whispered. Judge Judy never stopped a case like this. She never left the bench in the middle of a hearing. But she walked down from her bench, her robe flowing behind her, and headed straight toward Marcus. "Marcus," she said quietly. Her voice was gentle, nothing like the sharp tone she used with people who lied or wasted her time. Marcus looked up. His eyes were red. Tears streaked his face. He tried to wipe them away quickly, embarrassed that everyone was watching. "What's wrong?" Judge Judy asked. Marcus shook his head. "I'm sorry, Your Honor. I'm okay. I'll step outside." "You don't look okay," she said. "And you're not going anywhere until you tell me what's happening." The courtroom was completely silent now. A camera operator slowly zoomed in, sensing that something important was unfolding. Marcus took a shaky breath. "My wife died 2 weeks ago," he said, his voice breaking. "Today is her birthday. She would have been 56. Judge Judy's expression changed. The tough judge who could make criminals squirm with just a look suddenly looked heartbroken. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. Marcus nodded, trying to hold himself together. "I thought I could work today. I thought staying busy would help. But when I got here this morning and saw all these people with their families, I couldn't stop thinking about her." Judge Judy reached out and put her hand on Marcus's arm. It was a simple gesture, but it meant everything. Because in that moment, she wasn't a famous judge or a television star. She was just one human being showing another human being that their pain mattered. "You've worked here for how long?" she asked. 15 years, ma'am." 15 years, she repeated. "And in those 15 years, you've never asked for anything. You've just shown up every day, done your job, treated everyone with respect." Marcus didn't know what to say. He just nodded. Judge Judy turned to face the courtroom. Everyone was watching, many with tears in their own eyes. "This man," she said, her voice carrying authority, "has served this courthouse with dignity for 15 years. He's helped every single one of us at some point. He's been kind when he didn't have to be, professional when others weren't, And today he's standing here grieving the loss of his wife, yet he still came to work because he's that dedicated. She paused, letting her words sink in. The response. What happened next shocked everyone in the room. Judge Judy looked at the bailiff. "Clear my schedule for the rest of the day." The bailiff's eyes widened. "Your Honor, you heard me. Cancel the remaining cases, reschedule them for next week." She turned back to Marcus. "You're going home, right now, and you're taking the rest of the week off." "Your Honor, I can't afford." Marcus started to protest. Judge Judy held up her hand. "Paid leave. I'll make sure of it. You're going home, and you're going to take the time you need to grieve properly." Marcus's face crumpled. He started crying harder, but this time they were tears of relief mixed with grief. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you so much." But Judge Judy wasn't finished. She addressed the courtroom again. "I've been a judge for 40 years. I've seen thousands of cases. I've dealt with liars, cheaters, and criminals. But I've also seen good people who deserve better than what life has given them. Marcus is one of those people." She looked directly at the camera, knowing that this moment was being broadcast to millions of viewers. If you're watching this at home, and you've ever lost someone you love, you know what Marcus is going through. You know that grief doesn't follow a schedule. It hits you at random moments, in a grocery store, driving to work, standing in a courtroom doing your job. Her voice grew firmer, more passionate. "We live in a world that tells us to push through, to get over it, to move on. But sometimes the strongest thing you can do is admit that you're not okay." Marcus showed incredible strength by coming to work today, but he also deserves the space to be weak, to fall apart, to grieve without worrying about his paycheck. The courtroom erupted in applause. It started with one person in the back row and spread like wildfire. Within seconds, everyone was standing and clapping. The lawyers, the plaintiff, the defendant, the court staff, everyone. Marcus covered his face with his hands, overwhelmed by the support. Judge Judy waited for the applause to die down. When it finally did, she had one more thing to say. "Marcus, go home. Remember your wife. Celebrate her birthday in whatever way feels right to you. And know that when you come back next week, you'll have a family here who cares about you." The wait of 15 years. People often asked Marcus why he stayed in security for so long. Wasn't it boring? Didn't he want to do something more important? But Marcus never saw his work as unimportant. Every day he helped people, not in dramatic ways, not in ways that would make headlines, but in small, consistent ways that mattered. He remembered the elderly woman who came to court every week for months during a difficult estate battle. She was always confused about where to go. Marcus would walk her to the right courtroom, help her find a seat, bring her water. When her case finally settled, she hugged him and cried with relief. "You made this bearable," she told him. He remembered the young man who came to court for a minor traffic violation, but was terrified because he had never been in a courthouse before. Marcus explained the process, told him what to expect, calmed him down. The case was dismissed. As the young man left, he shook Marcus's hand and said, "Thank you for treating me like a person." He remembered the little girl who got separated from her parents during a custody hearing. She was crying, scared, lost in the big building. Marcus sat with her, talked to her about her favorite cartoon characters, bought her a candy bar from the vending machine, and helped her find her mom. The mother hugged him so tight he could barely breathe. These moments weren't captured on camera. They wouldn't go viral on social media, but they were real. They mattered to the people Marcus helped. Sarah understood this about him. She saw the same value in her nursing work, taking care of one patient at a time, making one person's day a little better, showing up consistently with compassion even when nobody was watching. "We're not saving the world," Sarah had said once, "but we're making it a little less harsh for the people we touch. That counts for something." Marcus believed that. Even now, even in his grief, he believed his work had purpose. That's why he showed up on Sarah's birthday, even though every cell in his body wanted to stay in bed, because somewhere in this courthouse, someone might need help, and helping others was the only thing that made him feel like himself anymore. After the courtroom cleared, something else happened that the cameras didn't catch right away. The lawyers from the canceled cases didn't complain. Instead, they approached Marcus and shook his hand. One of them, a woman in her 40s, told him that she had lost her husband 3 years ago and understood exactly what he was feeling. The plaintiff and defendant from the scheduled case, two people who had been angry at each other moments before, came over together and offered their condolences. The defendant even asked if there was anything he could do to help. The court clerk, a woman named Patricia, who had worked with Marcus for 10 years, started organizing something on the spot. She pulled out her phone and sent a text to everyone who worked in the building. Within an hour, a crowdfunding page went live. Patricia set it up to help Marcus with his wife's medical bills and funeral costs. She expected maybe a few $100s from courthouse employees. What happened instead changed everything. The video of Judge Judy's interaction with Marcus was already spreading online. Someone in the courtroom had shared it on social media. Within 2 hours, it had 100,000 views. By that evening, it hit 1 million. By the next morning, over 10 million people had watched Judge Judy stop everything to comfort a grieving security guard. And those millions of people wanted to help. The crowdfunding page exploded. Donations came from every state in America. $5, $20, $100. People shared the link with messages like, "This is what humanity looks like," and "We need more judges like her." By the end of the week, Marcus had received over $150,000 in donations. The impact. Marcus couldn't believe it. He sat in his apartment, staring at his phone, watching the number climb higher and higher. Strangers from across the country were helping him pay off every single medical bill. The funeral costs were covered. For the first time in 2 years, he wasn't drowning in debt. But the money wasn't even the most important part. The messages people sent brought him to tears. Hundreds of people shared their own stories of loss. They told him about husbands and wives and parents they had lost. They told him that watching Judge Judy's kindness had reminded them that good people still exist in the world. One message came from a woman in Ohio who wrote, "My mother died last year, and I went back to work the next day because I was scared of losing my job. Watching you break down and watching Judge Judy respond with such compassion made me realize I never gave myself permission to grieve. Thank you for showing me it's okay to not be okay." Another came from a teenage boy in Texas. "My dad is a security guard, too. People treat him like he's invisible. Seeing Judge Judy honor you reminded me that my dad's work matters. I'm going to tell him that tonight." These messages kept coming, thousands of them, and Marcus read as many as he could, crying through most of them, feeling less alone than he had in months. Judge Judy herself called Marcus that week. It was a private conversation, but Marcus later shared that she had checked on him to make sure he was okay and reminded him that her offer of support wasn't just for the cameras, it was real. The return. When Marcus returned to work the following Monday, something had changed. He walked into the courthouse at 6:30 a.m., expecting everything to be normal. Instead, he found a handmade banner hanging in the security office. "Welcome back, Marcus. We love you." The courthouse staff had organized a small gathering. There was coffee, donuts, and about 20 people waiting to greet him. Patricia gave him a hug. The bailiff shook his hand. Even a few judges came down from their chambers to say hello. "You've always been there for us," Patricia said. "We wanted you to know we're here for you, too." Marcus was speechless. He had worked in security for 30 years across different buildings, and nobody had ever treated him like this. He was used to being invisible, just a uniform standing in the corner. But Judge Judy's simple act of kindness had changed how people saw him. More importantly, it had changed how he saw himself. For years, Marcus had defined his worth by how quietly he could do his job. He thought being invisible meant he was doing it right. He never asked for help because he didn't think he deserved it. But Judge Judy had shown him, and millions of others, that being strong doesn't mean suffering in silence. It means being brave enough to be vulnerable when you need to be. Marcus also started a foundation in his wife's name. The Sarah Thompson Foundation provides financial assistance to families dealing with medical debt from cancer treatment. The initial funding came from the excess donations Marcus received, money he insisted on paying forward. Sarah always wanted to help people, Marcus explained in an interview. She was a nurse for 20 years. She spent her life taking care of others. This foundation is how I can keep her spirit alive. Within 6 months, the foundation had helped 12 families pay off over $200,000 in medical debt. In a rare interview about the incident, Judge Judy explained why she had stopped everything that day. "I've been on television for decades," she said. "I've handled thousands of cases. People know me as someone who doesn't tolerate nonsense, who cuts through lies, who holds people accountable. And that's all true. But justice isn't just about punishment. It's also about recognizing when someone needs compassion." She continued, "When I saw Marcus crying, I had a choice. I could have ignored it and moved on with my case. After all, I had a job to do, a schedule to keep, people waiting to have their disputes heard. But in that moment, Marcus mattered more than any of that." The interviewer asked if she had expected the video to go viral. Judge Judy smiled. "I didn't even think about the cameras. I just saw a man in pain who had spent 15 years serving others, and I thought he deserved someone to serve him for once." That simple statement captured what made the moment so powerful. In a world obsessed with views and likes and viral content, Judge Judy had acted purely from the heart. She hadn't calculated the optics or considered the publicity. She had just done what felt right. And millions of people responded, because that kind of authentic kindness is rare. The ripple effect. The Marcus Thompson story did something unexpected. It started changing how people treated service workers in their everyday lives. Coffee shops across the country reported customers asking baristas about their day and actually listening to the answers. Security guards in office buildings noticed people making eye contact and saying thank you. Janitors found notes of appreciation left on their supply cart. A teacher in Minnesota used the video in her classroom to start a discussion about dignity and respect. Her students organized a thank you week where they wrote cards to every staff member in their school: the custodians, cafeteria workers, bus drivers, and security officers. The movement spread to other schools. Within months, Thank You Week was happening in hundreds of districts across America. Students learned that everyone's work has value, regardless of how much money they make or how visible their job is. A hospital in Chicago started a program called See the Person after their staff watched Marcus's story. They trained employees to check in with each other, to notice when someone was struggling, and to offer support before being asked. Patient satisfaction scores went up because staff who felt seen and valued provided better care. These weren't grand gestures. They were small acts of recognition, but they mattered because they came from a shift in how people thought about the invisible workers who keep society functioning. Marcus received letters from security guards around the world, from London, Tokyo, Sydney, and Sao Paulo. They thanked him for representing their profession with dignity. They shared their own stories of going through hard times while feeling like nobody noticed or cared. One letter from a security guard in Atlanta read, "I worked the day my son died. Nobody knew. I stood at my post and cried silently because I couldn't afford to take time off. Watching Judge Judy see you and respond the way she did made me feel less alone in my grief, even 2 years later." Thank you for being brave enough to show your pain. Sarah's story. Marcus began sharing more about Sarah in interviews and public appearances. He wanted people to know who she was beyond being the wife who died. Sarah Thompson had been a pediatric nurse for 23 years. She worked night shifts at a children's hospital, caring for sick kids when most people were sleeping. She sang to babies in the NICU. She held the hands of scared children before surgery. She comforted parents who were terrified of losing their kids. Sarah had this way of making everyone feel safe, Marcus said in one interview, his voice full of love. Kids who were afraid of hospitals would smile when she walked in the room. Parents who were falling apart would calm down when she talked to them. She had a gift. When Sarah got diagnosed with cancer, her first concern wasn't herself. It was her patients. She worked through her first round of chemotherapy because she didn't want to leave her unit short-staffed. She only stopped when her doctors insisted she was too weak to continue. Even then, she volunteered to mentor new nurses from home. She reviewed training materials and offered advice to young nurses who were struggling with the emotional weight of pediatric care. She spent her whole life taking care of people, Marcus said. And when she got sick, she still wanted to give. That was just who she was. Marcus shared photos of Sarah. Her smile was radiant. In one picture, she was holding a newborn baby in the NICU, looking down with such tenderness that it made people cry. In another, she was laughing at something Marcus had said, her eyes full of joy. These photos humanized the story in a way that statistics never could. Sarah wasn't just a number or a sad headline. She was a real person who had loved and been loved. Her death mattered. Her life mattered even more. The courthouse family. Back at the courthouse, things had changed in subtle but meaningful ways. The staff started a weekly check-in meeting. Every Monday morning, about 15 people gathered in the break room for coffee and conversation. It was informal, no agenda, no required attendance, just a space for people to talk about how they were doing. Patricia started it after realizing that Marcus had been suffering alone for months, and nobody had known. "We see each other every day," she explained, "but we don't always really see each other. This meeting is about paying attention." People shared struggles they had been hiding: financial stress, family problems, health issues, depression, and they found support from colleagues who had become friends. The judges joined sometimes. Even Judge Judy stopped by once, bringing bagels and making everyone laugh with stories from her early days on the bench. She told them about mistakes she had made, times she had been too harsh, cases that still haunted her decades later. "I'm not perfect," she said. "Nobody is. But we can try to be better. We can try to notice when someone needs help. We can try to be the kind of people who make other people's lives easier instead of harder." The courthouse also implemented a crisis support fund. Employees could apply for emergency financial assistance if they faced unexpected hardships, medical bills, car repairs, family emergencies. The fund started with donations from staff, but after Marcus's story went public, contributions poured in from viewers who wanted to support the courthouse that had supported him. Within a year, the fund had helped 18 employees through difficult times: a single mother whose car broke down, a clerk whose apartment flooded, a bailiff whose father needed emergency surgery. Each time, they received help without having to beg or prove they deserved it. 1 year later. On the 1-year anniversary of the courtroom moment, Judge Judy invited Marcus back for a special segment. The courtroom was filled with people whose lives had been touched by Marcus's story. The courthouse staff was there, recipients of help from Sarah's foundation, security guards from around the country who had traveled to meet Marcus. therapists who worked with first responders and essential workers. Judge Judy began by showing the original video. Even though everyone had seen it dozens of times, watching it again brought tears. The raw emotion of that moment hadn't faded with time. When the video ended, Judge Judy turned to Marcus. "A year ago, you were standing in that corner, grieving and trying to hide it. Today, you're sitting here as someone who has helped thousands of people. How does that feel?" Marcus took a moment before answering. "Honestly, Your Honor, it still doesn't feel real sometimes. I'm just a security guard who had a hard day. I don't feel like I did anything special." "That's exactly what makes you special," Judge Judy replied. "You didn't set out to become a symbol or start a movement. You just showed up as your authentic self, pain and all. And that authenticity reminded millions of people that it's okay to be human." She turned to the audience. "We live in a world that celebrates perfection. Social media shows us edited versions of people's lives. We see success, but not struggle. We see strength, but not vulnerability. Marcus showed us the truth, that real people hurt, real people cry, real people need help sometimes, and there's no shame in any of that." The audience applauded. Judge Judy continued. "But here's what I want everyone watching to understand. This story didn't go viral because people love sad videos. It went viral because people are hungry for genuine human connection. They're tired of fake. They want real. They want to see people being kind to each other for no reason except that it's the right thing to do." She looked directly at the camera. "So here's my challenge to everyone watching. Find your Marcus. Find someone in your life who serves others quietly, without recognition or praise. See them. Really see them. Ask how they're doing, and listen to the answer. Offer help before being asked. Be the person who makes someone's bad day a little bit better." The heart of the matter. At the core of this entire story is a simple truth. Everyone has value, regardless of their job title or income level. Marcus wasn't a CEO or a celebrity or a politician. He was a security guard. But Judge Judy treated him with the same respect she would give anyone else, maybe even more, because she recognized his quiet dedication. That moment in the courtroom was powerful, because it challenged how society typically assigns worth to people. We tend to celebrate the loud, the rich, the famous. We overlook the quiet, the ordinary, the steady. But as Marcus proved, ordinary people living ordinary lives with dignity and kindness are the backbone of society. They're the ones who show up every day, do their jobs well, and treat people with respect, even when nobody's watching. Judge Judy saw that in Marcus. She saw 15 years of faithful service. She saw a man who loved his wife deeply. She saw someone in pain who still tried to keep going, because that's what responsible people do. And she honored all of it by simply stopping, paying attention, and responding with compassion. Messages to remember. If you take anything away from Marcus Thompson's story, let it be these truths. First, your pain is valid. You don't have to be strong all the time. It's okay to cry. It's okay to admit you're struggling. It's okay to ask for help. Suffering in silence doesn't make you noble. It just makes you alone. Second, your work matters. Whether you're a judge or a janitor, a CEO or a security guard, the work you do with integrity and care has value. Don't let anyone make you feel small because of your job title. Third, see people. Really see them. The security guard at your office, the person who cleans your building at night, the driver who delivers your packages. They're not invisible. They're human beings with lives and struggles and stories. Acknowledge them. Thank them. Treat them with the dignity they deserve. Fourth, kindness is powerful. Judge Judy's simple act of compassion created a ripple effect that touched millions of lives. You might think your kindness is too small to matter, but you never know who needs it or how far it might reach. Fifth, grief is love that has nowhere to go. If you're mourning someone, know that the pain you feel is proof of the love you shared. Don't rush it. Don't hide it. Honor it by allowing yourself to feel it fully. And finally, community matters. We're not meant to face life's hardships alone. Build connections. Check on people. Create spaces where it's safe to be vulnerable. Be the kind of person others can count on when everything falls apart. Marcus. Today, Marcus still works as a security guard at the courthouse. He considered retiring after all the attention, but he realized he loves his job and the people he works with. "This is my family," he says. "Why would I leave?" He still arrives at 6 a.m. He still greets everyone with a smile. He still helps elderly visitors find their seats and make sure the courtroom is safe. But something has changed. Marcus no longer tries to hide when he's having a hard day. If someone asks how he's doing and he's struggling, he's honest about it. And people appreciate his authenticity. He talks about Sarah openly now. He shares memories of her. He visits her grave every Sunday and tells her about the foundation, the lives they're helping, the good that came from their pain. "I think she'd be proud," Marcus says. "Not of me being on TV or getting attention, but of the fact that something good came from something horrible. That's what Sarah always did. She found ways to help people, even in the hardest situations." The foundation continues to grow. They've helped over 100 families now. Marcus personally calls each family to offer support and encouragement. He knows what it's like to be drowning in medical debt while grieving, and he wants them to know they're not alone. The story of Judge Judy and Marcus Thompson reminds us that justice isn't just about courtrooms and legal rulings. It's also about how we treat each other in everyday moments. It's about a judge who chose compassion over efficiency. It's about a man who showed vulnerability in a world that demands strength. It's about a community that rallied around someone in need. It's about millions of strangers who saw themselves in Marcus's pain and responded with generosity. It's about recognizing that the most important moments in life often have nothing to do with money or fame or success. They have to do with how we show up for each other when things fall apart. Judge Judy could have ignored Marcus's tears. She could have continued with her case. Nobody would have blamed her for staying focused on her job. But she made a different choice. She chose to see a hurting person and respond with humanity. And that choice changed everything, not just for Marcus, but for millions of people who witnessed it and were inspired to be more compassionate in their own lives. This is what real justice looks like. Not just punishment for wrongdoing, but recognition of human dignity. Not just enforcing rules, but acknowledging that sometimes people matter more than procedures. And this is what real strength looks like. Not hiding your pain, but being brave enough to show it. Not suffering alone, but accepting help when you need it. Not pretending everything is fine, but allowing yourself to be human. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe you know a Marcus, someone who serves others quietly and needs to be seen. Maybe you are Marcus, someone who's been strong for too long and needs permission to fall apart. Either way, remember this: you matter. Your work matters. Your pain matters. Your story matters. And in a world that often feels cold and disconnected, small acts of kindness still have the power to change everything.